Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
And a happy hump day to you, unless your travel involves Delta Airlines. This is not very cringeworthy. PBS with the story last night.
Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg says his department is launching an investigation into Delta Airlines over its treatment of passengers following last week's global tech outage. Authorities will look at whether the airline has been complying with laws around flight delays and cancellations. Delta has canceled more than 6,600 flights since last Friday, far more than any other airline. Long lines, unclaimed bags, and stranded passengers.
This is 1:15 in the morning in the Atlanta airport.
As frustration and tensions run high inside Atlanta's International Airport, where some have been stuck for the last 4 days.
Look around, there's bags everywhere, and there's still families just laying on the ground since Friday. So this is ridiculous.
Delta Airlines, based in Atlanta, is struggling to restore service to normal, canceling another 400 flights today. That is 10 times more than the next worst performer since the outage. Yesterday, Delta accounted for nearly 2/3 of all flight cancellations worldwide. More than half of the airline's IT systems run on Microsoft, more so than other airlines, leading to issues even locating and rescheduling crews. Passengers across the country have spent days trying to reach their destinations.
Communications have been very scarce. We've gotten text messages, about, updates to gate changes and, flight departures, but they've been very scarce. The app, I think, is back up to running at some degree. It's not as bad as yesterday, but it's hard to get a hold of a representative. I contacted Delta. The wait time was 12 hours to get a hold of an agent.
Transportation Secretary Buttigieg said his department has received hundreds of complaints and says Delta must inform its customers that they're entitled to a refund if they choose not to travel. Delta says it's issuing transfers and travel vouchers. But the bad news isn't over yet. Delays and cancellations are expected for several more days.
I forgot that ABC News still did Nightline. I guess it's Jimmy Kimmel. Yeah, so I forgot they did this. Anyway, they had a pretty scathing piece on Nightline last night. Yeah, take a listen to this. This is very biographical.
For Ian Malachevsky, the travel nightmare began when his Sunday night flight was canceled. The Harvard law student, who's paralyzed from his chest down, found himself stranded in Salt Lake City for 48 hours.
And I was just like, look, if I don't get this wheelchair charger, my chair's going to die. And it's 450 pounds. You can't push it. It's a power chair. And if I don't get my medication, there could be some serious other issues in my medical equipment. And then she said, check your Delta app and we'll let you know when the luggage is out of the plane.
He'd been out west for a celebration, but he didn't know getting back to his job in Miami would be nearly impossible.
And that's just on the wheelchair side of things. I mean, they didn't even have anybody to address any questions about finding a hotel, rebooking a flight. When we were calling the 1-800 number, people would answer and then hang up on us.
Ian is just one story of frustration and anger unfolding across the country as Delta Airlines deals with the ongoing fallout of last week's global technology outage. It started early Friday morning when a faulty CrowdStrike update caused computer glitches affecting hospitals, businesses, and multiple airlines. While other airlines have largely recovered, Delta is still struggling to get back on track. Since last week, the airline has canceled more than 6,000 flights, with thousands of others delayed.
It's pretty bad. So we're discussing whether we just cancel our trip completely, because I don't want to do this every day.
Families settling in for another night on terminal floors.
There were people laying in every nook and cranny, just trying to rest, and it was crazy. This is I travel a fair amount, and I've never dealt with this before.
It's funny. I've just this past week, I've taken 3 different parties to the airport, and I'm trying to think. Most of them, one of them was flying Delta, and I kept telling, as we're driving to the airport, I'm just being the courteous guy here, driving friends to the airport. Are you checking the app? Are you checking the app? Are you getting updates? And yeah, I would hear stories. Yeah, it's hard getting updates. Then there are those. I dropped a couple of people off who were flying Frontier, and Normally, I wouldn't say, thankfully, flying Frontier. Not that I'm trying to diss on Frontier. Frontier or Spirit, like if you're on Frontier or Spirit, you know what you bought. You bought a ticket onto a flying subway train. You're literally hanging onto the strap. I'm kidding, obviously, but it's no frills because it's low budget. But Delta's definitely having some problems here, and this is obviously a bad look for Atlanta's hometown airline. It doesn't help the folks at CrowdStrike stock prices, I'm sure, Microsoft and their stock prices either. To which I would say this might be an opportunity to buy the stock low. And again, I'm not trying to make light of the harrowing situation here, but this comes back to what I've been saying for quite a while now on this show about transportation alternatives. We don't have enough transportation alternatives in this country. We're so beholden to fossil fuel. We're so beholden to the oil and gas industry in this country that if you are stuck at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, I'm trying to remember who it was. Oh, they were going to New Orleans. Yeah. Some friends of mine were going to New Orleans and their flight got delayed, so they stayed overnight. I said, why did you not just book Amtrak? Here's the problem with Amtrak. And again, I like Amtrak. I've used Amtrak a number of times. The problem with Amtrak is especially if you're coming from Atlanta to go anywhere, whether it's New Orleans or up the East Coast, it takes you to it snakes through Charlotte and up the East Coast to, I think Charlottesville, and then DC, and then Philadelphia, New York, yada, yada, yada. The problem with Amtrak is, especially in the South, Southeast, the rail that Amtrak uses, Amtrak doesn't own. I believe it's Norfolk Southern rail that they own. So anytime there is a Norfolk Southern train or cargo, Amtrak has to pull off to the side on one of the side parking rails there and wait as that train goes by. It's scheduled out in some kind of curious way. My point is a 6.5 hour drive to New Orleans, or a short, hour maybe flight to New Orleans from Atlanta, is akin to 10 plus hours in the train to get there. It doesn't make logistical sense, right? And the same can be said for taking a train out of Atlanta up the East Coast, because again, most of the rail between here and I want to say Virginia is owned by Norfolk Southern. So Amtrak does not have priority on the rails that they use. Now, throughout the rest of the country, it's a different story in a lot of Amtrak's network. But here in the South and Southeast, that's not the case. And again, we don't invest in rail. We don't invest in high-speed rail. Obviously, we don't have a high-speed rail network in this country. It leaves us in these situations where we're kind of screwed. And again, at the whim, not only of the airline industry and their technological glitches, that's going to happen. Obviously, no one expected the CrowdStrike situation to cripple Microsoft systems throughout the world, and of course the airline industry. And I can't speak for why it is that Delta is having a harder time than most airlines are, but I do know that passengers who are stuck in this situation, whether it be from a technical glitch, whether it be from like during the pandemic, folks were kind of getting back out of the pandemic and trying to fly again. Southwest had their snarls, of course, due to weather and illnesses in the workforce, and trying to get folks moved around and reschedule, et cetera, and so on. Passengers are getting stuck, literally stuck in airports with no alternatives. Rental cars are not available, and no alternative means to travel. Like, I don't know, a high-speed rail network. Partisans on the right are going to want to make this about Department of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who I think should be on the short list for vice president, but doesn't appear to be. They'll want to make this about the DOT and government inefficiency. I tell you all the time, listen, the right wing's little endless loop cycle there of government inefficiency is near brilliant. They run for office telling you that government's inefficient. Then they get into office. They starve institutions of funding, which means staffing shortages and technological displacements or lack of advancements. And of course, that makes those institutions inefficient. And then they say, see, these government institutions are inefficient. We should just get rid of them. It's a feedback loop. It just keeps going on. I also want to bring this to a local story here. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution is reporting here. Let me give you this. David Wickert reporting that the Georgia Department of Transportation, which, by the way, provides not one red cent to mass transit in the state of Georgia, specifically MARTA, Metro Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority. They're offering new details on more toll lanes for Interstate 285. These are going to be those Peach Pass lanes that you can pay extra to ride on lanes meant only for people who pay extra to kind of rise above or off to the side to move a little bit faster than the rest of us stuck on I-285. Anyway, David Wickert's reporting subheadline, study showed dozens of residences and businesses would be displaced, but traffic would improve. Sure, David. I know it's his study. It's a study. He's just reporting on the study. It's not him saying that, but sure, Jan. We've heard that for decades now. Oh, additional lanes ought to fix this. If anyone who is listening to this that doesn't live in Atlanta has traveled through Atlanta, do you think all the additional lanes that we have fixed our traffic woes? No. So David Wickert's reporting, toll lanes along the top end of the perimeter and adjoining highways would displace 21 residences, 44 businesses, an environmental study finds. The Georgia Department of Transportation also would acquire slivers of numerous other properties to build the toll lanes. And the project would increase noise in the area and have other adverse impacts, the study found. Though GDOT would build noise barriers. Oh, those are always attractive. Noise barriers. Nothing says beautification like these concrete wall noise barriers. And take other steps to mitigate the effects. By the way, this project's going to cost about $9.5 billion. $9.5 billion. What would $9.5 billion do if GDOT actually did invest in mass transit and coordinated with the city of Dunwoody and surrounding communities to come up with a way to tie that region to, existing mass transit? Just a thought. Makes too much sense. Let's just try the additional lanes thing. Yeah, it's never worked before, but let's try it anyway. It'll definitely help. This time, I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I've spent a lot of time the last few months riding around, showing houses, securing listings. By the way, I'm a residential real estate agent, for those just catching up. Just sitting there in endless traffic, not moving at a standstill, looking at my GPS or the Apple Maps telling me that I've got 28 miles to go, and it's going to take 60 minutes, 58 minutes. I'm not even going a mile a minute. This is insane. It makes absolutely no sense that we as Americans are so smitten by the romantic idea. Remember when we were kids? We're like, man, I can't wait till I am 16 and get my own car and the license and the freedom of the road. It's going to be so much fun. Are we having fun yet? I'm not having fun. This is not fun in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And I love my car. I love the marvelous Ms. Mazda, Miriam the Mazda. I love her. She's absolutely fantastic. Love her to pieces. She's, driving on Atlanta and Metro Atlanta streets and highways, so she's a few dings and nicks and scratches here and there over time. It's going to happen. Planning on getting, some body work done here in the very near future, so she'll look pristine again, but that'll have to wait. Anyway, I'm just wondering, are we having fun yet? Those of you who are parked at the airport, literally having to sleep overnight on, you hope, carpeted floors because, they put the armrests in the benches so that the homeless people don't sleep there. Anyway, are we having fun yet? Air travel used to be, we used to look at it so romantically, oh man, it looks like a lot of fun. It looks like so classy. Man, you're going to get fed and the service is great and the flights, there's in-flight entertainment. Are you having fun yet? Flying's not fun. Driving's not fun. And yet, we can't seem to come to grips with the idea. And by the way, any of you who haven't taken an Amtrak trip, I'm telling you, especially today with mobile transportation options, your digital options for entertainment, a lot more fun. You get to meet people. You can, if you're not driving, obviously you can work. Can't necessarily do that unless you pay for Wi-Fi extra. Is that fun on the airline? There's a lot to like about train travel, and we just the one caveat being there's not enough of a network to get you from point A to point B without having to go all the way around your neck sometimes to get there. You can't go direct from Atlanta to St. Louis, Memphis, Nashville, and of course the time, because again, Amtrak doesn't have priority on a lot of its rail system. But are we having fun with this yet? I'm just wondering, when are we going to start having this epiphany collectively as Americans that this ain't working? This does not work. We need alternatives. And we're finally starting, I think, to have some conversations, even just here in Georgia. You're starting to even hear Republicans talk about maybe a rail network connecting the major cities in the state, to Atlanta, to the airport. Huh. Yeah. Go figure. Yeah, that could work. And you've got existing right-of-way with the interstates already, a lot of them having just nothing but empty medians and high grass that wouldn't need to be cut anymore if you have a rail line going smack dab down the middle in most cases. Obviously, once you get into the city, you don't have that. But it's still, if the Georgia Department of Transportation is going to spend $9.5 billion just in the Dunwoody area around 285 to add lanes that people will have to also pay for to be on, what are we even doing? This makes absolutely no sense. It's time for us as Americans to start having a conversation about how we move ourselves and our goods and services around and start thinking about things other than fossil fuel-driven methods. Or we can just politicize this some more and harp about Pete Buttigieg because he has been on the job for 3 years trying to help us deal with something that we've spent decades working ourselves towards. While we hand-wring about the cost of MARTA expansion, oh, that's too expensive. And then nobody stopped to think, $9.5 billion for some toll lanes in Dunwoody along I-285? Where's the noise, y'all? This is The Ron Show on America One Radio. You can follow The Ron Show, by the way, on your preferred social media platforms, at Ron Show ATL, Twitter, X, Threads, Instagram, Facebook. I want to get back to this, the toll lanes thing in Dunwoody. Let's get back to David Wickert's reporting at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Toll lanes along I-285 and portions of Georgia 400 and I-85 would reduce travel times, we're told, by 39% for motorists who paid to use them and even 8% for those who drove in the free lanes. That's according to the Georgia Department of Transportation. And the lanes would allow MARTA and other transit agencies to operate rapid bus lines on one of the busiest, most congested stretches of interstate highway in the country, we're told. Construction of the project, years away. So even these estimates can't even be nailed down as coming to fruition. Because if the construction is years away, and we have no idea, I mean, we have some idea what our population growth is going to be like, but that's still not concrete. Anyway, project years away. DOT has disclosed those and other details of the $9.5 billion project as it seeks public input. Here we go, y'all. This is our part. And prepares to finalize the environmental study. The findings drew a mixed response from area residents who attended an open house on the project in Dunwoody last week. Sorry, I just realized I'm clicking a pen while I'm recording this in the background. Stupid. Dunwoody resident Robert Wittenstein, hi Robert, wishes state and local officials had pursued a light rail line along the perimeter instead of adding more highway lanes. He worries about the impact of more vehicles on a stretch of highway already traveled by more than 240,000 each weekday. I care very deeply about this community, he said. I think this is a missed opportunity. Abso-damn-lutely. Dunwoody resident Jerry Adams resigned to the project, which abuts his neighborhood. I guess, personally, he says, I must say it has to be done. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they've done their due diligence. It's not exactly the ringing endorsement that that the Georgia Department of Transportation or local and elected local officials are probably seeking here. And let's think back to the car v rail thing. If you have additional people traveling by vehicle, you're going to have additional vehicles, which means the need for additional lanes eventually. It never stops. It's a never cessation. It just never stops. Eventually, I mean, how many lanes is enough lanes for I-285? What could we say would be the answer in 25 years? Look back 25 years ago and see how many lanes it took to get around on I-285 then. You probably didn't have enough then, honestly. Now ask yourself, if you have more passengers on a train, do you need more rail or do you need more train? And does there come some huge cost, say 10 years from now, if you decide you needed additional cars on a train versus additional lanes for the car, for the vehicle? And even then, if you decided, well, we need additional trains, okay, you have more trains in rotation. You up the schedule. Instead of every 8 to 12 to 15 minutes for stops, you can up the number of stops, right? That doesn't cost nearly as much as adding additional lanes to highways to facilitate more vehicles. This is fiscally conservative. Pass it on. It's fiscally conservative. Rail transit is fiscally conservative, if you think about it that way. Back after this, The Ron Show on the American One Radio app, AmericanOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, or wherever you podcast.
Follow The Ron Show on Facebook at The Ron Show Radio. The Ron Show on America One Radio.
So, for the last month or so, we've been sort of gnashing our teeth a little bit, those of us left of center, those of us maybe center left even. Any and every time President Joe Biden is going to give a speech, or as he did after the NATO conference, do a full-fledged press conference, which, by the way, I thought he did a really good job. And even then, some missteps. We've spent a lot of the last couple of years sort of quietly hand-wringing as well anytime he was going to give a public speech, a campaign stop, or what have you. And yesterday was the first time in quite a while that we instead looked forward to the presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party for the office of president, gave a public speech, and while I think we may have been anxious going into it, I don't think we were quite as clenched. Does that make sense? I guess what I'm saying is Vice President Kamala Harris, now the presumptive nominee for the office of president, or the nomination from the Democratic Party anyway, gave her first campaign speech as the presumptive nominee. And I give it a solid 8 out of 10, maybe 8.5. Let's listen to it, and then we'll weigh in after.
So it is good to be back in Wisconsin, and it is great to be in Milwaukee. As many of you know, our state campaign headquarters are in this city. Yes, and there is a reason for that. The path to the White House goes through Wisconsin. Yes, it does. And to win in Wisconsin, we are counting on you right here in Milwaukee. And you all helped us win in 2020. And in 2024, we will win again. Yes, we will. So, Milwaukee, I want to start by saying a few words, and I could really speak at length, but a few words about our incredible President Joe Biden. It has truly been one of the greatest honors of my life to serve as vice president to our President Joe Biden. Joe's legacy of accomplishment over his entire career and over the past 3.5 years is unmatched in modern history. In one term, think about it, in one term as president, he has already surpassed the legacy of most presidents who served 2 terms in office. And I know we are all deeply, deeply grateful for his continuing service to our nation. And it is my great honor to have Joe Biden's endorsement in this race. Wisconsin, I am told as of this morning that we have earned the support of enough delegates to secure the Democratic nomination. And I am so very honored, and I pledge to you I will spend the coming weeks continuing to unite our party so that we are ready to win in November. So, friends, we have 105 days until Election Day, and in that time, we've got some work to do. But we're not afraid of hard work. We like hard work, don't we? And we will win this election. Yes, we will. So as Leah told you, before I was elected vice president, before I was elected United States Senator, I was elected Attorney General of the state of California, and I was a courtroom prosecutor before then. And in those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type. I promise you, I will proudly put my record against his any day of the week. As Attorney General of California, I took on one of our country's largest for-profit colleges that was scamming students. Donald Trump ran a for-profit college that scammed students.
That's right.
As a prosecutor, I specialized in cases involving sexual abuse. Well, Trump was found liable for committing sexual abuse. As Attorney General of California, I took on the big Wall Street banks and held them accountable for fraud. Donald Trump was just found guilty of fraud on 34 counts. But let's also make no mistake, this campaign is not just about us versus Donald Trump. This campaign is about who we fight for. This is about who we fight for. Just look at how we are running our campaigns. So Donald Trump is relying on support from billionaires and big corporations. And he is trading access in exchange for campaign contributions. A couple of months ago, y'all saw that a couple of months ago at Mar-a-Lago, he literally promised big oil companies, big oil lobbyists, he would do their bidding for $1 billion in campaign donations. On the other hand, we are running a people-powered campaign. And we just had some breaking news. We just had the best 24 hours of grassroots fundraising in presidential campaign history. All right? And because we are a a people-powered campaign, that is how you know we will be a people-first presidency. And Wisconsin, this campaign is also about two different visions for our nation. One, where we are focused on the future. The other, focused on the past. We believe in a future where every person has the opportunity not just to get by, but to get ahead. A future where no child has to grow up in poverty. Where every worker has the freedom to join a union. Future where every senior can retire with dignity. So all of this is to say, building up the middle class will be a defining goal of my presidency. Because here's the thing we all here, Wisconsin, know. When our middle class is strong, America is strong. But Donald Trump wants to take our country backward. He and his extreme Project 2025 agenda will weaken the middle class. Like, we know we got to take this seriously. Can you believe they put that thing in writing? Read it. It's 900 pages. But here's the thing. When you read it, you will see Donald Trump intends to cut Social Security and Medicare. He intends to give tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations and make working families foot the bill. They intend to end the Affordable Care Act and take us back then to a time when insurance companies had the power to deny people with pre-existing conditions. Remember what that was like? Children with asthma, women who survived breast cancer, grandparents with diabetes. America has tried these failed economic policies before, but we are not going back. We are not going back. Not going back. We're not going back. We are not going back. And I'll tell you why we're not going back. Because ours is a fight for the future. And it is a fight for freedom. Generations of America's, generations, and we have to remember this, the shoulders on which we stand, generations of Americans before us led the fight for freedom. And now, Wisconsin, the baton is in our hands. We, who believe in the sacred freedom to vote, will make sure every American has the ability to cast their ballot and have it counted. We, who believe that every person in our nation who should have the freedom to live safe from the terror of gun violence, will finally pass red flag laws, universal background checks, and an assault weapons ban. And we, who believe believe in reproductive freedom will stop Donald Trump's extreme abortion bans because we trust women to make decisions about their own body and not have their government tell them what to do. And when Congress passes a law to restore reproductive freedoms, as President of the United States, I will sign it into law. So, Wisconsin, ultimately in this election, we each face a question. What kind of country do we want to live in? A country and to your point, do we want to live in a country of freedom, compassion, and rule of law? Or a country of chaos, fear, and hate? And here's the beauty of this moment. We each have the power to answer that question. The power is with the people. We each have the power to answer that question. And in the next 105 days, then we have work to do. We have doors to knock on, we have phone calls to make, we have voters to register, and we have an election to win. So, Wisconsin, today I ask you, are you ready to get to work? Do we believe in freedom? Do we believe in opportunity? Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we ready to fight for it? And when we fight, we win. God bless you. God bless the United States of America.
I think I played her campaign video, was it yesterday? And from 2020, the one that really just took aim at Donald Trump. And she did this in this speech as well. Speaking to the sexual assault, the fraud, the university scandal, Trump University. I thought she really hit on a lot of points and did so with some teeth, something that Democrats, I don't think they always do all that well. I think in a lot of times they take the Michelle Obama mantra, they go low, we go high, and take it to an extreme and sit on the sidelines playing with mittens while the other team's wearing boxing gloves and taking full-on swipes. This speech, and again, that 2020 campaign ad that ran early in the primary season, those have teeth, and I'm here for it, and looking forward to it for the next, what are we at, 104 days now. This is a side of the Democratic Party that we've needed to see for quite a while. Again, a solid 8.5 out of 10. I mean, she didn't say anything awkward about drinking Diet Mountain Dew and that being racist. I mean, it's just a solid 8.5 out of 10. Good on her for that. Final 3 minutes of today's show. Let's go to the report from The Hill, thehill.com. House Republicans teeing up a vote on a resolution to condemn the Biden administration and specifically, get this, Vice President Kamala Harris over their handling of the U.S.-Mexico border. The move is an apparent reaction to Harris becoming, you think, the likely Democratic presidential nominee following President Biden's Sunday announcement that he would no longer run for re-election. It also previews the policy arguments Republicans will make against Harris as they adjust to the shifting political environment. The resolution, led by House GOP Conference Chair Elise Stefanik from New York, references Harris's role as, quote, border czar, though that was not an official title that Biden gave Harris, nor was she asked to oversee the entirety of policies on the U.S.-Mexico border. Biden did ask Harris to head up a diplomatic campaign to address the root causes of migration from countries in Central America. I've talked about that initiative before, which I believe launched in February or March 2021, like literally weeks after President Biden and Kamala Harris were sworn into office. A policy agenda to deal with root causation in the Central and South American countries where folks are coming from. By that, I mean she was tasked with heading up efforts to deal with what is sending people from their countries to the United States and points in between. She was not a border czar. It's a key difference. Surely I don't need to spell that out to anyone with any intelligence, right? She was not the border czar. She wasn't asked to go to the border to deal with Border Patrol or the judicial process that's gummed up the numbers that we've been stuck at since the 1960s, which, of course, gum up the numbers even further. The lack of federal funding for Border Patrol and the judicial process to process folks who come here to seek asylum, which obviously could have been dealt with a bipartisan bill that was there waiting to be passed into law if only Donald Trump hadn't said, no, save that for me. I always go back to the cat analogy. If you don't want stray cats on your porch, right, you don't leave kibble out. That's what I say when Republicans don't deal with the fact that businesses, employers are the ones that are luring people here who aren't, of course, fleeing for environmental or political violence, anything like that. Those who are legitimately coming here to seek asylum obviously deserve the opportunity, and we're bound by international law to give them that, the opportunity to prove their case to be welcomed into this country. Anyway, Kamala Harris was not in charge of the border. She was in charge of root causation to find out why people are leaving their home countries to come here and to help address those problems so that it doesn't continue to happen. Representative Jim McGovern at this hastily held emergency meeting.
This is an emergency meeting. You heard that right, everybody. This is an emergency. Not an emergency meeting to fix the border.
Nope.
But an emergency meeting to bash Kamala Harris.
Basically.
That's the emergency. Are you kidding me? The emergency is that Donald Trump is losing and they're in a panic.
Yeah.
And he's so unpopular that they need a meaningless resolution to try to prop him up. Now, I get why he's unpopular. Maybe they should call on him to step aside, considering how rambling and unfocused and boring he's become. He's the oldest presidential nominee in history.
Ooh.
And I'm hearing from a lot of people he should step down.
He then turns to Representative Michael Guest, congressman from Mississippi, in questioning this border czar proclamation, this title that's been anointed her.
I keep on hearing border czar. How Russian. But it seems very appropriate coming from my Republican friends. But the very first sentence here says, whereas on March 24th, 2021, President Biden asked Vice President Kamala Harris to serve as the administration's border czar. Mr. Guest, he didn't do that. Where did you get that from? Did you make it up? This is not a true statement. So why is it in the resolution?
I mean, I think clearly she's been referred to throughout media as the border czar. And so while that may not have been the official language that he
have referred to her
used.
that, and maybe extreme right-wing media might have, but that's not what she was appointed to do.
Representative Mary Scanlon from Pennsylvania spelling out what yesterday's emergency meeting actually was.
The MAGA majority has called an emergency hearing to pass a do-nothing resolution to condemn the vice president for her alleged failings on a job that never existed.
Yep.
But more on that job later. So we have to note right up front that the resolution before us was filed and given emergency status only after President Biden announced that he was withdrawing from the presidential race.
So transparent.
And after Vice President Harris became the presumptive nominee. So I'll tell you what the emergency is. The emergency is that House Republicans have wasted a year and a half using congressional resources to attack and investigate President Biden and his family to help the former president's campaign for revenge. And not only did those investigations come up empty, but now Biden's not the candidate. I'll tell you what the emergency is. House Republicans have wasted a year and a half saying the most important issue in America is a crisis at the southern border. But when they were presented with a bipartisan immigration deal, they turned it down.
Yep.
And when Republicans were presented with a bipartisan border security funding package, they turned it down.
Pure political theater. That's what the GOP is really good at. Not passing laws. Obviously, this is the most useless Congress in generations. But investigations that lead nowhere. You know, like James Comer's impeachment inquiry, as Jamie Raskins pointed out, in front of James Comer yesterday on Fox. I'll leave that in the show notes at ronshowatl.com as well. Back tomorrow night at 10 a.m. on America One Radio. Have a great day, y'all.